Now, there are some related concepts, as I said: anonymity, secrecy, confidentiality, security. Okay, these are sort of confused sometimes, so I have taken these concepts from a research paper. So, anonymity is the ability to conceal a person's identity. Individuals can choose to be totally anonymous, pseudo-anonymous, or identifiable. Recently, there was a discussion about sharing Aadhaar number, okay, with business entities. Okay. And since if you share your Aadhaar number directly, business can actually misuse it or use it as your identification. Okay. For example, go for a cell phone service, you give your Aadhaar number, they can actually use it for profiling you. So, to prevent that, Aadhaar came up with the idea that they can actually create a pseudo identifier or a number which is not same as the Aadhaar number, but it will be issued by Aadhaar. Okay. Aadhaar can link that number to your number, but a business entity cannot, or somebody else cannot. So, that is pseudo anonymity, but pseudo anonymity is not pure anonymity, because an agency can reconstruct your identity. But in any case, when you hide your personally identifiable information, and then that is called anonymization or anonymity. For example, you are a student and I want to analyze how well the class is doing in terms of your academic performance. Okay. Now, the class says no, suppose I am not the faculty, somebody else wants to do that. Okay. So, you say no, I do not want to disclose my identity. Okay. You want to see how the course is doing or how academics is doing, you can just look at the grades, but do not link it to the individual. So, what somebody asks for, with your permission, I will say I can give the marks of all the students to you, but I will number it as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I will not give your name, roll number, email ID, anything that is personally identified. I just give the specific data or the attribute that is of interest. Okay. Your grade is not a personally identifiable data, it is a fact. It is a measure or a fact. We discuss fact table measures, right? Measure is something that organization wants to analyze, and that is not identifiable data. So, I can give the measure, I can anonymize you. Okay. And now you can imagine how data mining or analytics, this concept is important. A company needs to share individual data, it is important to anonymize individuals to protect individuals' identity. Okay. So, there are actually anonymization techniques. I will discuss that in the next few slides. Secrecy is intentional concealment of information, okay, where you not only want to be anonymous, you do not want to disclose anything to someone, and you also can mislead people. Okay. Then there is confidentiality and security. In the next slide, where I have a 4 quadrants, a 2 by 2, the x axis being accuracy of personal information, and the y axis is about amount of personal information externalized or shared. Okay. So, based on that, you can understand these 4 concepts of secrecy, transparency, anonymity, and confidentiality. So, the 4th quadrant is the quadrant which is high on accuracy of personal information and amount of personal information. Okay. That is your 100% transparent. Okay. So, we say public institutions should be transparent. Okay. There should be nothing concealed. Okay. So, you share almost full information accurately. Okay. That is transparency. The opposite of that is secrecy. You do not want to share, okay, like countries. Okay. So, they may actually share information which is not correct, or it could be misleading also. Okay. In order to protect your actual information, and you do not share any extent or any volume. So, that is secrecy. Okay. So, secret is a problematic method or a status. Okay. We have personal secrets, so we may hide that somehow from others, or we may try to mislead others as well. Anonymity, you can see, is the first quadrant, where accuracy of personal information is low, but you may share a lot of information. Like in data mining, it cannot be accurately linked to you. You may be sharing all the information, all the facts about what is going on, like your grades, but personal information is very limited. It is not personally linked to anyone. That is the anonymity part. The confidentiality is the other way. Okay, you don't share, certain information is confidential. Okay, so therefore you make the extent of sharing limited, but when you share the complete information, okay, with identity. That is one way of understanding these concepts: confidentiality, secrecy, anonymity, and transparency. But keep in mind that confidentiality is typically used in the organizational context. Privacy is typically used at the individual level, okay, generally in literature. So let us understand anonymity. There are some browsers which offers anonymity, in browsing, incognito browsing. Yeah, each browser has its own terminology: private browsing, incognito, etc. But what does that mean actually? Does it ensure anonymity? Service provider knows, okay, but who doesn't know? Yeah. The local machine that you use to browse, if you do anonymous browsing, it doesn't keep a history, it doesn't keep the passwords, it doesn't track the history. When you actually exit from that browsing, there is no record in the machine. But as he rightly said, the service provider knows the sites that you accessed. Okay. All right. So it is sort of providing anonymity to some extent, okay, when some users want it. So as we said, there is also privacy preserving data mining, which is an important topic when it comes to analytics, data analytics, because companies collect and store large amount of personal information, and this personal data, if it is shared with an external entity, or if when you outsource analytics, okay, it's going to a data processor. And in order to protect individuals, it is important to hide identity of individuals from external service providers. When the data collector or the data owner is conscious of the issue of privacy. So therefore, one needs to anonymize the data. Okay. So there could be totally anonymous data sharing, there could be pseudo anonymous, we talked about it, or identifiable, where you share the full information. So in privacy preserving data mining, there are three methods broadly. One is randomization, second is anonymization, and third is encryption. Okay. There are three main techniques for privacy preserving data mining. Randomization is rather easy to understand. Okay. So the data provider, or the data collector, the one who has collected and stored the data, when it is shared with a external agency or data analyst or a data processor, before you send the data to the data processor, you randomize the data. So as given in the last paragraph, if xi is the value of a sensitive attribute, you add a random term ei. Okay. So what the data processor receives is not the same data. Okay. It adds a random value to that data, okay, where ei is a random noise drawn from some distribution. Okay. So maybe the data processor receives a distributional property of that data, but not the exact data. Okay. That is randomization. So randomization is one technique where data processor does not receive the same data, okay, but a randomized data with some pattern. Okay. But what is more interesting for us to see is anonymization. Okay? Anonymization, I have taken this from a research paper by Sweeney, published, Sweeney is from Harvard Business School, and this paper discusses a concept called K anonymity. Okay? Just like you have K means clustering in cluster analysis, there is a K anonymity. Okay? And look carefully at the definition of K anonymity. Okay? K anonymity is defined as each release of data must be such that every combination of values of quasi identifiers can be indistinctly matched to at least K individuals. So, essentially saying that K has a value. Okay? Suppose I ask you your name and your roll number. Give me your roll number, you are uniquely identified. That is distinct. Okay? You are distinctly identified. But I do not ask you your roll number. I ask you, where is your place of birth? Where is your place of birth? Huh? Maharashtra. He just said Maharashtra. Maharashtra. Which year you were born? 99. Sorry. Okay. So, are there any people from Maharashtra here? Any other person from Maharashtra? No. Okay. You are uniquely identified. And with 1991, suppose there is one more person from Maharashtra here who was also born in 99. Okay. Since I am not distinctly identifying you, I have some quasi identifiers. But the problem is, with these two quasi identifiers, there are two people. Okay. The K becomes 2. These two attributes together can be mapped to more than one person, which is 2. K becomes 2. Suppose I make it even more blurred, then it may map to 3 people. I just say, where are you born? Okay, Maharashtra. There are, say, if it is a large class, there are 8 people from Maharashtra. Well, there is some identification still, but it has anonymized you to K extent. Okay. So, that K is the extent of anonymization. Look at these two tables, they actually illustrate this concept. In anonymization or in K anonymization, there are two techniques. Okay. First technique is called suppression, the second technique is called generalization. Okay. Suppression and generalization. Okay. So, compare table 1 and table 2. Can you figure out what is suppression? Table 2 is the anonymized table, table 1 is the original table. So, it has employed two techniques. Okay. Table 2 employs two techniques, suppression. Suppression and generalization. Can you figure out these two? Suppression, a column is completely removed, right? You do not find the name column in table 2 at all. So, suppression means completely removing a column, it is suppressed, okay? It is removed. It has the potential to identify a person uniquely or closely, therefore, that column is removed. But it also applies generalization. Can you compare the birth column in table 1 and the birth column in table 2? Yeah. It has generalized the date of birth, it has removed the date and month, it only gives the year. Okay. So, it is an attempt towards anonymization, not complete anonymization, but anonymization. You also have to run this idea in mind. Well, for analytics to be effective, you need some characteristics of individual. So, it is trying to share, well, this person was born in this year, but we do not say the date of birth, that may actually lead to identifying the person. So, it is trying to strike a balance between what value you can generate out of analytics, at the same time it does not become identifiable. So, generalization is an effort towards that. Year is disclosed, but date and month are not disclosed, okay? That is generalization. You can see that in zip code also, right? Basically, it is generalizing, it may give a sense of which area one belong to or which county, I do not know, but the last digit is removed, right. So, two techniques are used in suppression and two techniques, suppression and generalization, for anonymizing. Now, look at the first record in table 1. Okay. It pertains to an individual called Alice. Alice, of course, race is not disclosed, date of birth is given, sex is given, zip code is given. So, these identifiers together makes a unique, there is a unique record, okay, for this person, and this person's fact or measure, okay, is that the person has a disease called flu. Okay. So, person is sick and the sickness is flu. Okay. That is a sensitive data, but it can be identified with the rest of the identifiable data. Okay. Now, when it comes to table 2, you see there are two people, blank, the first two records, blank 1965 M0214, blank 1965 M0214. The identifiable data is the same. Okay. So, therefore, it is, you will say who has flu, it can be record 1 or record 2. Okay. The sickness flu can be attributed to two people. You look at the definition of K anonymity. Okay. It can be indistinctly mapped to two people, K equals 2. Actually, this table anonymizes and makes it possibly linked to two people, not one person. Okay. And you can give the same interpretation to other records also. Okay. So, the purpose of anonymization is to remove that unique identification of certain fact with an individual, and it tries to anonymize using anonymization techniques, suppression and generalization. And in practice you see that, right, in anonymization is something that you come across in your Aadhaar number. If you have a wallet, the last 4 digit, okay, and your credit card information 6709, okay, the more data. Is it, what type of anonymization is this? Is it generalization or suppression? When you remove, when you show only 4 digits of an Aadhaar number or a credit card number? No, then you didn't get it right. Okay. In suppression, you remove a column as it is, you completely remove it. You look at the zip code. Okay. That zip code is generalization. You disclose it, but you remove part of it. Okay. Or the date of birth, only the year. In a similar way, this is generalization. Okay. This is generalization. You remove a part of it and disclose only a small part. But these techniques have limitations. When you have certain quasi identifiers, you can also collect more data about those records and link multiple records and make you uniquely identified. That is known as linking, and that is what analytics does in many cases. And there are algorithms for linking which can very effectively create identities for individuals, especially in several contexts like medical or for government. So, linking is a particular algorithm in data mining for reverse tracking the identity of individual when identity is anonymized. Okay. From anonymity, you can actually link more data and create identity, and that is known as linking. Okay, the last slide, risk versus, the last but one slide, risk versus utility of data, known as RU maps. Okay. Risk and utility is a trade off. Privacy is a risk, there is a privacy risk. Okay. When you disclose complete information, okay, there is a disclosure risk. Okay. And that risk is very low when your disclosure is less. Okay. When you completely disclose, your risk goes up. But when your risk goes up, you can see when you move towards this part of the graph, you can see here the risk is going up, it's here, okay, or privacy is very low, okay, but the utility from the data is very high, or analytics insights are very high, okay. But if you actually anonymize data, you move towards here, okay, what suffers is the value of analytics, okay. Especially you cannot profile customers and you cannot recommend products because you don't know who the customer is, okay. At an individual, personalization is not possible, okay. So that is a trade-off between risk and data utility, and that is where you saw the generalization, where it generalizes to some extent, but it does not completely remove your identity. So you need to act somewhere, operate somewhere here, so that the value of analytics is not completely compromised or diluted. At the same time, privacy is protected, okay. So this trade-off is illustrated in this graph, risk versus utility of data. Yeah, so our aim today is to understand, given individuals and organizations and concern for privacy and organizations need to deliver services effectively, how this sort of need to balance two aspects need to be done at the country level, at the governance level, and that is known as regulation, okay. So there are privacy regulations that is still emerging in different parts of the world. OECD regulations came, the FIPS was the first, we discussed that yesterday, in the United States. These were guiding principles, this was not a regulation, these are principles, fair information practice principles, okay. In a similar way, even in European Union, there was no regulation till 2018, it was only a directive, EU Data Protection Directive, not a law, not a regulation. Regulation means it is enforceable by law, okay. But in 2018, the directive D got replaced by R, it became a regulation, okay. That is 2018. So you can note that the world is changing in terms of regulating data, okay, regulating data, okay, because of the the huge digital data storage and flow that is happening, it has become a necessity. So in the United States, as you will appreciate, there is no one regulation that is binding or that is overarching for all exchanges of personal data, but they have domain specific regulations, like the HIPAA for healthcare data, okay. So for several domains you will find different guidelines and regulations, and this also vary from state to state. US is having, the states have the right to have laws, to their own state laws, and that also brings another dimension of complexity, okay, in the US. So you will see this landscape is very different, but there are certain common attributes. So maybe GDPR would be a very broad based, and this is something most countries are trying to emulate, including our country and some states in the United States also, okay. So we will actually focus on this in the next two sessions. Tomorrow our next discussion will be on GDPR, and subsequently we will look at the Indian context of privacy and security, and we will get more insights along with certain case studies. So today we have a case study which is from the US, because we are focusing on America in today's class, okay. So along with the case you also see some of the limitations because there is no countrywide regulation, okay. All right, so I will close here. Any questions? Okay, so I will hand over the session to the next group to present the case and discuss the case. Of course, it's a fairly detailed case, and it's very challenging, but I'm sure you're prepared. Okay, all right, thank you.